So, my wife and I just got finished watching the show Parks and Recreation. I have been a fan of the show for a long time. My wife was a skeptic, but we got over the hump. She really enjoyed it. And the show takes place in a small Midwestern town in Indiana. And in this town, there's a company called Sweetums, and it's this big kind of massive sugar conglomerate. And in one of the episodes, they come out with this health bar called Nutriums. All right, and it sounds like it's this amazing thing, right? It's like, oh, well, it's healthy. It's made of all kinds of natural things. It's just like a little bit of sunshine and some other stuff. And so everyone's getting hyped up that they've got this healthy option and it tastes delicious. It's too good to be true. And this one character that's a nurse comes in and says, what are you guys doing? Like, oh, we're eating Nutriums and they're healthy. And she looks at the label and says, oh, no, they really aren't. And then everyone kind of starts to have a sugar crash and they realize that it's full of nasty corn syrup and not maybe as healthy as it was billed to be. Tonight we're going to be in this series, Better Love, and we're going to be kind of looking at a more serious topic tonight. And up front, I'm just going to say this is kind of has the possibility to maybe make some of us in this room uncomfortable. These are the things that we don't like talking about. But hang with me, because the truth of the matter is this may not be the most comfortable thing for us to hear about. But the beauty of the Bible is that there is no story in this book. There's no darkness that the Bible shows us, that there is not also an equal or better solution that the cross provides. There is redemption and restoration available in all of these things. You see, because just like Nutriums in the town of Pawnee, Indiana, we live in a culture that celebrates and lifts up the concept of lust and telling us that it's something that it just is not. You know, we live in a culture right now that if you slap the word love on something, it's totally protected. Nobody can tell you it's wrong. Nobody can give you any amount of pushback, because if you push back on that, you're being a bigot, you're being a racist, you're being whatever. But we're going to talk about some real stuff these days and realize that the way that our culture talks and uses love is oftentimes a cheap imitation of what God created. And while we live in a world and a culture that tells us that lust is something to be celebrated, the truth of the matter is it's a very dangerous thing that affects almost everybody in this room, if not everybody. It does affect everybody in this room in some way, shape, or form. It is a piece of sin that almost all of us are going to have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. And it's something that many of us in this room struggle with in one way or another. And we're going to talk about it tonight because you know what? This is the truth. This is something that goes on in our lives. It's something that we need to talk about. And so we're going to. And the truth that we're going to see today in this series about better love, because while the world loves to tell us what love is or what love can be or what you're not allowed to say love isn't, the Bible shows us what love really is. Who love really is. And what we see as we look at a passage of scripture today that's a little more challenging is that lust is the enemy of love. And as we break down this story out of the Old Testament book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13, we're going to see that lust blinds, lust harms, and lust shames. It is the enemy of love. It is entirely the opposite. But what we're going to see when we get to the end of all this is that love heals. So I warned you, this may not be the most comfortable thing to talk about in church, but we're going to go for it because especially this is something that guys in particular struggle with, but girls were not immune to it either. We all need to hear this. It's the enemy of love. And the first thing we're going to see is that lust blinds. We're going to be looking at a story out of the book of 2 Samuel. So this is the time of King David. And we're going to be looking at David's family. David is a guy who had kind of several wives and sons from some of those different wives and different kids. It broke down. It wasn't necessarily God's best plan. But here we have it. And so this is where this story begins. In 2 Samuel 13, let's read the first 5 verses together, and we'll talk about it. It says, in the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. So this would be his half-sister. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard, morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight so I may watch her and then eat it from her hands.'" So right off the bat, it talks about how Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar. And this is the image, and this is the word that's used. But as we look at kind of how this story shakes and plays out, what this is not love. It kind of, the actions are what show us. He shows this kind of selfish desire that borders and transforms quickly into this matter of obsession, right? He can't eat. He makes himself sick over this feeling and infatuation that he has for his half-sister. It's what he wants, and he can't see anything else. In fact, it's interesting that Jonadab, the advisor that's with him, he says, "Listen, you're the son of the king. You've got so much going for you. Why are you, of all people," and by the way, he wasn't just the son of the king, he was the oldest son of the king. "Why are you, of all people, downcast?" "Oh, well, I love my sister and I need to have her, and not in a good way." His obsession, his lust, has it so he can't focus on any of the good things around him. And in fact, he can't even acknowledge that how he's feeling maybe isn't the right way to feel. All we see that he even has a little bit of reservation is, well, because she's a virgin, I probably can't. But it's not because it's wrong, it's just because there would be too many implications. If it was a little easier, I'd just get what I want. We all have a way when it comes to this. Whether it be with lust or sometimes other types of sin where we become so fixated and infatuated of something that we can't see outside of ourselves to realize what's going on. You know, there's a common expression that maybe some of you have heard called a moth, like a moth to a flame. How many of you have heard it? Some of you? Like a moth to a flame. How this expression came to be, when somebody uses that expression, it means they're kind of drawn towards something that is ultimately going to destroy them. And how it came to be was, it's a phenomenon in nature where it kind of, maybe you've seen the bug lights, like in the movie Bug's Life, right? Where like these bugs kind of just go towards the light and they know it's going to zap them and kill them. And they're like, "Oh, don't go towards the light," and bam, they die anyway because they can't help it. This is how this phrase came to be, and this is kind of what it's like. It's this thing that promises everything, and you become drawn, and you can't realize that you're heading right into the very thing that can destroy you. One of the things that I know is true about each and every one of you, because it's been me in my life as well, is I think that it's easy for us, all of us, to desire or want to be desired. Right? We've all felt this at different times. But one thing we see about lust is it chases the immediate. There's no consideration for anything beyond itself. It has the blinders dead on and it charges. And the reason that we often go running after that thing is, no matter what the consequences may be, is there something that we see that feels like we need to have it now. I don't want to think about later. I need this now. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that we think lust promises to give you and me? Is it meaning? Protection? Pleasure? This desire to have something or someone What's the promise that it's offering that you think that it can give you? Because the truth is, we can become so easily blinded to the negative aspects of lust, and we'll dress it up, right? Well, lust is such a dirty word, Jack. I hate that you say that word. Because we don't call it that in a day-to-day life. At least not often, right? Because we convince ourselves that it's not that bad. And that we can now find, if we can find what we need now, then that's what we need to do. Because you know what? If it doesn't happen now, it might never happen. I might never get this thing. And sometimes that deals with romantic love and physical sexual stuff. And sometimes that same principle translates to other things. Geez, it can be as simple as wanting to get a drink and buy something at like Starbucks. Like, well, if I don't get this now, I might never get it. Now. Right? And that's the thing. You don't get to say if you're never ever going to have that thing. How in the world are you going to know? What you're really saying is, if I don't get this now, then I'll never get this right now. Maybe you weren't supposed to. Maybe that can be okay. What are you chasing? What are these things promising you? Because the emptiness that you and we can all feel, right? You know, maybe you're single and Valentine's Day was tough. You're like, well, I just need to fill that hole. Maybe you're dating and you still had that. Maybe you're married and sometimes you still feel like that. That's not a coincidence. That's because this emptiness that we sometimes feel isn't meant to be filled by anything here. But what lust tells you is, if you get that right now, you will feel better and it will fix everything. And it is a promise that it is substantively unable to give. You will never be satisfied in romance until you are first satisfied in God, because He is the only one whose love can fill the void that we try to fill with other things. The things we run to at the internet late at night, the things we run to when we text that person because we just desperately crave the validation of a response. Lust blinds us from seeing there is a world and a life that God has for you and for me that is bigger than we can see. 5 feet in front of our face. Lust blinds, the next section we're going to see when we look at this story, and this is kind of a little bit of the more uncomfortable part of the passage, is that lust harms. And this section deals, I'm going to just tell you straight up, this section deals with rape, and it's not a comfortable one. But before we get into this, I need to kind of make a quick caveat here and say really, very plainly that the Bible records things that occurred, okay? These things happened. It's stated of fact. This does not, however, mean that God endorses everything that it is written in the Bible. God is not a God who endorses or praises over rape. So if you are someone who has experienced abuse or know somebody who has, this is not condoning that. It's not meant to endorse or normalize it. Far from it. What we will see is this text highlights the negativity of rape and lust, because the truth of the matter is, for many of us, what we need to realize is lust is not something that happens in a vacuum. It harms yourself, it harms others, and it is the enemy of vulnerable, true love. The passage continues in verses 6 through 14. It's a longer section. We'll read it together. So Ammon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Ammon said to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and to make special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand. David sent word to Tamar at the palace, go to the house of your brother Ammon and prepare some food for him. So Tamar went to the house of her brother Ammon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, and made it the bread in his sight and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. Send everyone out of here, Ammon said. So everyone left. Then Ammon said to Tamar, bring the food here in my bedroom, so I may eat from your hand. And Tamar took the bread, and she prepared and brought it to her brother Ammon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, come to bed with me, my sister. No, my brother, she said to him, don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you. But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. This is a horrible story. It's not meant to be anything less. And the truth when it comes to something like lust is, we're always in control of those things. We're always in control. It's always ours. It's always private. No one's really hurt until somebody is, of course. You're always in control until you're not. See, because the truth about lust is lust needs what it needs and doesn't care who it harms. It's heartbreaking when you see his sister talking to him and says, this isn't supposed to happen. Do you care about me at all? What's going to happen to me? If this happens, what's going to happen to you? And the truth is, in that moment, he doesn't care what happens to himself. Because lust can't comprehend compassion. It only wants what it wants, and it is intrinsically harmful, and it's harmful to everyone it touches. There's nothing loving or tender or appropriate about this scene. Lust harms. And if you think that's something you can control, it's kind of like trying to clean up an oil slick with dirty hands. Yeah, I can just make this better, and suddenly it's something that you can't recognize. It's playing with fire in the most extreme sense of the term. And I think what makes this very difficult to hear and to talk about, right? This is obviously, everyone can kind of agree this is bad. In fact, some people will go as far as say this is why Christianity is messed up. You see, this is in the Bible. Those Christians are jerks. And their God is a hateful God. No, that's not true. This is not a positive story, nor is it framed as one. But one of the greatest lies we hear today in regards to lust and sexuality is that it's harmless. Right? If you go on Netflix or Hulu or even Disney Plus today, I dare you to try to find something that is not in some way, shape, or form sexualized or promoting a more promiscuous lifestyle. Jeez Louise, High School Musical, the series? Remember when High School Musical came out? Half the stuff that's in that new series wouldn't have been touched, but now it's supposed to be okay? No, it's love. Okay, well, I can't touch it now. No, that's garbage. It's not harmless. That thing that you look at online, the thoughts you have that you think nobody else can hear, you don't think that's damaging? And look, this isn't just me trying to make you feel really horrible about where you are, what you struggle with, and when. Guess what? We all, to some degree, struggle with this stuff. This is not for you to feel beat upon. This is for you to realize that there is a depth and reality of sin. And guess what? You don't accomplish anything by saying it's good. And that's what I think, by and way, is what people are trying to tell you. They say, well, no, you might feel bad, but listen, it's so overrated to say something is sinful or bad. If I tell you it's good, you don't have to feel bad about it anymore. Because nobody can tell you no. Well, guess what? That's not the way of it. Lust harms others. It harms yourself. And I think it's easy for us to self-protect in this. But even if the way you experience lust is in a way that you would say and be able to defend, it isn't something that directly harms somebody else, let me assure you, it is wholeheartedly harmful to you. It absolutely is. Just ask somebody. Ask somebody who's a little further down the path than you. If those things, those struggles, haven't had echoes. And the beauty is we serve a God that can redeem and restore every inch of that. But you can't restore something that you're insistent isn't broken. Because the truth is, lust and sin that's committed sexually, it's using a good thing outside of the context that it was made for. And what lust does that's so deceitful is it trains your brain physiologically, chemically, trains your brain to need something outside of God to feel satisfied. Not just chemically, now this is spiritually. Because when you chase after lust, what you're saying is, I know I was designed to need God, but what I really am designed to need is this person, this thing, this experience now. Trains you to feel like you need something else to be satisfied. You need something else. It trains you to think selfishly. And if God satisfying you sounds like another Christian meaningless mantra, just kind of take a minute to acknowledge that you and I, we are all running to something. And lust tries to tell you that I can give you what you need cheaply and immediately, but here's the catch. Lust is not love, it is love's enemy. And where lust tells you to do what feels best at any cost, love is the opposite. It is inherently sacrificial and selfless. And guys, this is why the cross is so beautiful. This is why real, better love has been and always will be an amazing countercultural thing. Because God expresses his love for you and for me, not by coercing us to forcibly be good, but by sacrificing himself for us, that we might enter into forgiveness by the death that he paid for you and me on the cross. Lust is the enemy of love, and it harms. It harms us. It blinds us, it harms us. And the last thing we're going to see as we kind of wrap this passage up and we wrap up our time in this discussion is that lust shames. Verses 15 through 19 read like this. It says, then Ammon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. This is fascinating. Immediately after, loved her more, hated her more than he loved her. Ammon said to her, get up and get out. No, she said. Sending me away would be greater wrong than what you have already done to me. But he refused to listen to her. He called his servant and said, get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after her. So the servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she wept. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's fine. This is just my thing. And if I got it, things would be way better. Yeah, except for the fact that he finally gets this thing that he's been craving, that he's been lusting after, and suddenly everything's worse, not better. It kind of gives you echoes of the Garden of Eden, where the serpent talks to Adam and Eve and says, listen, if you just take the fruit, you'll be like God. And they say, oh, I like that. I'd love to be God. He's pretty awesome. I could be that awesome. That food looks good. They eat an apple and then boom. They're not so much like gods. They realize that they're naked. They need to cover themselves up. They're hiding from the very God that they used to be in perfect community with. Just like the apple, this caused more problems than it solved. And then what we see is this idea of harm is exponentially increased. Tamar says back to his brother, her brother, what you're doing now is worse than what you did to me before. How am I supposed to live like this? Where is the hope? She goes out. She's cast away. She has the robes that are worn by the virgin daughters of the king, except she realizes that she can't wear those anymore. There's no future for her anymore. She's shamed. He's shamed because now suddenly he doesn't like this anymore. See, Ammon reveals the truth about lust is that it promised everything and was so desirable that he became sick, but you know what? It promised everything and delivered nothing. Lust is the enemy of love. And one of the best evidences that we see of that is when we achieve the object of our lust. When we finally get to the goal that this thing said that it would give us, we find that it is utterly empty. I'm an online shopper. Confession. I love Amazon.com because in 2 clicks you can have whatever you want, provided that you can pay for it. And sometimes I can pay for it, but I shouldn't, right? So I look at this thing that I definitely don't need because I don't need anything really. Another board game, right? We're trying to get rid of those as fast as we can, kind of. But you ever done this thing? I know I have, where you click order or you purchase something and you walk out of the store or you walk away from your computer and you're like, oh shoot, that was probably a mistake. What happened? 5 minutes ago, when you needed that thing, you were going to be happier if you got it, and you weren't going to be satisfied until you had it. Now suddenly you finally have it and you're like, oh, that was a huge mistake. The truth is, when it comes to whether or not you bought that doily or thingamajig on Amazon.com, that's not going to make or break your day, whether you have it or you don't have it. But it examples the fact that when lust is in charge, when it's in the driver's seat, the decisions we make with our sexuality, the decisions we make in our hearts and our minds, we have to really evaluate the cost, because the truth of the matter is it promises something that it simply cannot deliver. Lust is not love. We need to stop wrongly putting this label onto it. And I think while many of us can run and try to downplay the role that lust plays in our own lives, I would ask you to consider the fact that in our lives and relationships, we know that it's true that lust is not love, and sometimes we end up chasing things with hearts that are broken. And this disconnect between promise and reality, it often results in some pretty negative stuff as it comes to lust and sexuality in particular. This is a difficult thing to talk about. This isn't something that I get really pumped to speak on. It's not fun. Because my guess is that each of us finds ourselves somewhere in this struggle, in one way or another. And my guess is it looks differently for kind of many of us. See, because lust tells you that it is all about what you can do to feel good now, but it often gives you a legacy of guilt or shame, restlessness, aggression, selfishness. And you look at a story like what happened to Tamar, and you walk away and you're like, well, where's the hope? What is supposed to make this better? And the truth of the matter is, what we don't see in this story, but we see plastered over the whole story of Scripture, is that the antidote to lust is love. Lust is the enemy of love, but love is the antidote to lust. And when I say love, this is the catch. What I'm not saying is that it's a love that you do, or that you are able to kind of gin up a love that makes your lust more manageable. No, it's not a love you do, but the antidote to lust is a love that you receive. It's Jesus Christ, God's Son, who looks at all the broken pieces, all the messes we have made of our hearts, and says, that thing you've been looking for to feel full, you know what, I can help. It shows us that love isn't about what we can take or have, but it's about what we can give and receive. And he showed us that by giving his own life to pay for the sins that he never committed. But it was the sins that we did, you and me. And it's when we learn to fight, to receive, and rest in this love, then that we see that that's the antidote to our lust, to our craving for this thing that can't satisfy us. And suddenly, We don't look for the wrong ways to use what God created because we're satisfied in Him, in who He is, how He loves me in a way that nobody else could ever love me. So now I don't have to run and seek validation that I already have. Patience for love horizontally on this world is made easier the more satisfied you and I become in the love that you've received vertically. God created love and marriage and sex. All these things were created and they're good. But He created them in a particular way and on purpose. It's so that we might know love within the context of safety, of commitment, and of selflessness. Because love is not primarily physical or emotional. It is primarily spiritual and sacrificial. That is what love is. It's not just a physical feeling. It's not an emotion that you have some days and not the other. This is why we need to stop hiding things behind the label of love as a safeguard. Let's find out what love really is. It's not about how you feel today. It's not about how somebody tells you is appropriate. Love is spiritual. It is sacrificial. It is of God. It can't be something that is against who He is. And here's some practical applications as it comes to love, and particularly physical relationships for you and for me. I speak to the guys and then the girls. Guys, straight up, you and I are wired more physically. But I want to tell you that we as men need to be willing to fight for purity, so that at the right time you can serve and give something beautiful to your future spouse that is worth it. And there are not very many places that are going to tell you that. And girls, here's for you. Any man not willing to wait and sacrifice for you now is not someone who is worth you sacrificing your purity for now. Because you will not secure their love by compromising your purity. That will only feed their lust. Just because love is sacrificial does not mean you sacrifice for somebody who is not willing to sacrifice for you. And wait. And maybe some of you feel convicted or maybe even angry because, hey, maybe you've made some choices that you wish you could take back, or maybe you've been a victim of sexual abuse. And I want you to hear that the kind of God that we serve does not disqualify us on the basis of our wrong choices that we've made or the wrong that was done to you and to me. So if that's you, that is still the standard. That is still something that I desire and I want for you. But the mistakes that you've made, the choices that you've made, or the choices that have been done to you have nothing to do with the grace and the redemption and the restoration that is available in the person of Jesus Christ. Are you in a place where instead of chasing lust, you can receive and be changed by the better love on offer by a holy God?